Well, welcome to the 700 Club. He's a war criminal. That's how President Biden denounced Vladimir Putin for his horrific attacks on Ukrainian civilians. Russian forces are reportedly using human shields, and then this is unbelievable. They're bombing buildings clearly marked housing children.
Ukraine's president made a passionate plea to members of Congress for more help yesterday. He showed them a video of Russia's vicious onslaught to rally additional support. Wendy Griffith has more.
The Russian military continues to bombard residential areas of the Ukrainian capital. Now there are reports of attacks against civilians in other parts of the country. Ukrainian officials say Russian forces bombed this building in Mariupol, where hundreds of civilians sought shelter, even though the pavement was clearly marked with huge white letters spelling out children in Russian. It's unclear how many were killed, but there are reports that many survived in a bomb shelter under the building. Russian troops are reportedly holding hundreds of civilians hostage in a hospital in Mariupol. Human shields to protect Russian military positions nearby. In the northern Ukrainian city of Cherniv, the U.S. Embassy reporting that Russian troops shot and killed 10 people standing in a bread line. Wednesday, President Biden called Putin a war criminal.
I think he is a war criminal.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky showing a video of the Russian attacks on civilians to the U.S. Congress Wednesday. In his address, he evoked Pearl Harbor and 9/11. Zelensky asked again for a no-fly zone, but said if that is too much to ask, he'll take more weapons and tougher sanctions on Russia.
I call on you to do more. New packages of sanctions are needed constantly, every week, until the Russian military machine stops.
His remarks had lawmakers on both sides of the aisle ready to do more. On CBN's Faith Nation, Nathan Gonzalez of Inside Elections said it's a rare show of bipartisanship.
Republicans and Democrats are united, I think, mostly in not wanting to be directly involved, but providing that support either through allies or providing support directly to Ukraine to defend itself.
Following the speech, the president announced another $800 million in aid to Ukraine, bringing the total package to $1 billion, including hundreds of anti-aircraft systems and drones to help the Ukrainian army defend itself.
We're going to give Ukraine the arms to fight and defend themselves through all the difficult days ahead.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces have launched a counterattack to retake areas around the capital city. CBN's George Thomas reports from a church in Kyiv, just a few miles from the front lines.
The church is right there.
Yeah, the church is right there.
And the Russians? The red is the Russians.
Yeah, already is the Russians. And
so the church is in between Kyiv and the Russians, your church?
Yeah, yeah.
When you see all this red, do you get nervous?
No. No. We just pray.
You just pray.
Within hours of Russia's invasion, Grace Church, a prominent evangelical congregation in Kyiv, started holding prayer services every 4 hours.
We received a revelation from God that we are to pray. And the more the church is praying, it destroys the enemy and destructs their ability to shoot at Ukrainian territories, civilian targets, and our Ukrainian military.
Senior pastor Andrea Martinov firmly believes God is answering those prayers as Ukraine's military fights to rebuff Russian forces.
Ukraine will not be conquered by Russia. With God's help, Ukraine will overcome Russia.
Yet you cannot underestimate just how precarious the church sits geographically. On the western edge of Kyiv, Grace Church is 6 miles away from Russian forces.
Of course, we are in regular communication with the Ukrainian military. And if there's any immediate danger, we will inform our people. But we are the church. We stay here. We do not run from war.
Nearby explosions are a daily occurrence, as I discovered while working in the church's parking lot. Yet explosions do little to deter an army of volunteers like Natalie Novikova, who've been coming to the church every day since war started to sort, pack, and gather relief supplies.
Even though we hear the explosions, and sometimes they are very close, We just continue doing our ministry to help those who are in deeper need than we are. And that's why I'm not scared at all.
Even 11-year-old Elizabeth is here pitching in.
I feel good because I know that I'm doing something very important.
The church has so far helped some 60,000 people since Russia's invasion. And they tell me this humanitarian effort is going to continue for as long as it takes. In the meantime, their focus is on Russia, and they are praying for a major spiritual breakthrough.
I believe the end goal of this war will be the fall of Putinism, Stalinism, communism, and all the other ideas and ideologies which Russian mentality was built on.
Oleg Bogomaz, one of the key pastors here, is urging Christians worldwide to not only pray for his nation, but also for Russia, as they endure unprecedented political and economic upheaval.
This is my prayer. God, if you could save Nineveh, please save Russia as well.
Pastor Martinov believes the war will bring a spiritual breakthrough in Russia, leading to greater religious freedom.
The word of Jesus Christ will be freely preached in Russia. I firmly believe this, and this time will come. Mark my word, you'll see it.
George Thomas, CBN News, Kyiv, Ukraine.
That's a prayer for all of us to imitate. Lord, if you can save Nineveh. And here's Jonah, who ran away from that, and he was called to preach good news, to preach that God will receive you back. And it was the very people that were oppressing Israel. So what a wonderful prayer, what a wonderful Christian. Well, millions of people are fleeing the war in Ukraine. Most of the refugees are women and children. CBN's Operation Blessing has been on the ground helping these desperate families. Take a look.
We have arrived here at a refugee center close to the border with Ukraine, where more than 4,000 people have been displaced by the war, and they're spending the night here. And many of them are children that have been affected by the war and, of course, incurred tremendous trauma by what they've seen and what they've heard. Now, we're in this room here that's being turned into a room where children can escape for a moment from the realities of war, where they can play, where they can be ministered to, where they can receive trauma counseling. And it's thanks to your support that that we're able to make this happen. So thank you very much for ministering to the children of Ukraine and let them escape for a moment from the realities of war.
Well, we're setting up help for the refugees. We're distributing hygiene kits, food, water, baby formula, the necessities of life. And you can be a part of it. You can say, yes, I want to do my part. I want to help the people who are suffering. Call us, 1-800-700-7000. We have an Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund. You can write to us at CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia. Just put Disaster Relief Fund in the memo line of a check. You can text us, OB Crisis, to 71777, or you can go to cbn.com, or you can just call and say, I want to give. I want to help those refugees. 1-800-700-7000. Let me remind you, we've been operating in Ukraine now for 30 years. Orphans Promise has been there for over 20 years. There's a map showing all the different Orphans Promise centers. We've got a refugee center that's just been currently set up just in the past few weeks on the border of Poland and Ukraine to help with that mass refugee crisis that's happening there. But these are centers where your gifts are going into work. They're going in to help people both in the war zone and refugees who are fleeing the war zone. You're a part of it. In the early moments of this war and the conversations with our Ukrainian staff, it was always about how can we make you safe? How can you be safe? And that has been so far. But Terry, you just told me you've had an Orphans Promise center director that was kidnapped.
Yeah, they're, of course, 7 hours ahead of us, so it would have been earlier in their day today. But people saw it happen. It was a woman. She's worked for 8 years in that occupied territory, Donetsk and Luhansk, and she has delivered seed to people. She has helped them work on their seed projects. And now, during this expansion of the war, she's been doing nothing but taking humanitarian aid to people. And they came and kidnapped her. I'm going to guess that Valentina is in her 50s, maybe, and put a bag over her head and led her away. No one knows where they took her, where she is. So please pray for Valentina. We're asking that she would be released, asking God to send angels with her, that she would be released without harm.
Amen. Well, the people of Ukraine are enduring unimaginable suffering. Regent University is helping them deal with the extreme trauma through a unique counseling program. Charlene Aaron has the story.
For nearly a decade, Regent University has been working with the government, churches, and universities to train counselors in Ukraine. With millions suffering in the recent Russian invasion, the work is needed now more than ever.
We first started in 2012 when I first came to Regent as a new faculty. And we had an invitation from a private Christian school to educate pastoral counselors at that time, Christian counselors.
Dr. Olya Zaporozhets, a Ukraine native, serves as an associate professor for Regent's School of Psychology and Counseling. Part of her work includes training mental health counselors in her home country, both online and in person. After Russia invaded and occupied the Crimean Peninsula of eastern Ukraine in 2014, the focus expanded from training just clergy to trauma counseling.
We saw it as consistent with our mission. We're here as an educational institution, but we want to make an impact on real-world issues where we can, while fulfilling that educational goal.
Dr. William Hathaway serves as Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs at Regent. He tells CBN News how the counseling program uses researched and well-recognized models for trauma care, while also including a Christian approach, especially now.
Who knows right now where things will go in Ukraine, but certainly people need all the resources they can get for resiliency. And I think those spiritual resources are particularly important for that. It helps instill hope. It also helps people in areas of dealing with pain and injury.
Zaporozhets says current events are having a big impact on their work because Ukrainians enrolled in the counseling program have been personally affected.
Let's stabilize our clinicians, and then that helps them to remember, hey, at this situation, you don't need to know a lot of things. You just could do breathing, and that works. That helps you come down and then see what the next thing would be. That is important for survival.
As the war continues, Regent plans to remain engaged and rebuild lives for as long as it takes.
Everything that I'm seeing right now on the mental health side, we're not going to have less work, but more. And at this point, we are standing alongside with all of our psychologists, counselors in Ukraine.
Many who have recently completed training are already making a difference.
There are some people that we trained are literally in the trenches right now as we speak. And there are people who are in military, there are people who are in hospitals. Those students who are Christians, they are a little more outspoken about miracles that God is doing during this war and how He's responding to prayers, which are undeniable.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Well, we're celebrating the Feast of Purim today, the story of Esther, and those words ring true for such a time as this. How can we stand and be of help to people who are in desperate need? And whether that's for just the basics of life, food, water, shelter, the things that you need just to live, but also for their mental health, their spiritual well-being. If you want to learn more about the Open Doors counseling program in Ukraine, all you have to do is go to the cbnnews.com website.